Thank you for listening to today's episode. I want to share something with you. My signature program, Next Level Latina, is officially coming back. And to celebrate, I'm hosting a free webinar today, June 3rd, 5 to 6:30 PST. But if you're listening to any time after that, you can still get the replay. And how do you know if you're a right fit? Well, let me ask you a few things real quick. Have you been secretly dreaming about something beyond your 9 to 5? Do you have an idea, a brand, a podcast, a passion project that has been tugging at you, and every time you try, you can't be consistent? And when you start doing it, you feel doubts like, who am I to do this? What if I fail? Is it even worth it? If that sounds like you, this is your moment. I created Next Level Latina because I know exactly what it's like to feel that pull and not being able to do it and feeling all the resistance. To have the job and the degree and the success, but still feel like a part of you is missing. That's the part that wants you to create something that's yours, that reflects your voice, your story, your poder. And once I followed that whisper, everything changed for me, and I can't wait to share what can happen with you. This webinar is for you if you want to start a purpose project, and you'll learn the mindset shifts that unlock the momentum of how to gain clarity and confidence without overthinking, how to create something that brings income and impact, and real stories from Latinas who went from stuck to feeling visible, aligned, and thriving. Even if you don't feel ready, show up anyway, and that's where the magic begins. And hey, it's okay if you can't make it live, no worries, sign up and I'll send you the replay. Save your seat on the link below because your next level isn't waiting for the perfect time, it's waiting for you. Nos vemos. Welcome to Empowermente, the headquarters of personal empowerment. Hey y'all, welcome back to Empowermente, where we help you step into your next level with confidence, purpose, and healing. Today's guest is one of our own, Johanna Jani. She's a powerhouse, therapist, mother, and cycle breaker who joined Empowermente Circle and went on to build a brand that's changing lives. In this episode, we talk about what it really means to break generational cycles, honor your emotions, and build a career that reflects your truth. Johanna opens up about navigating motherhood, launching her brand Sana Sana Johanna, and all that it took behind the scenes, growing up in an Ecuadorian American household, and now being in an interracial marriage, and the divine nudges that led her to finally share her voice publicly. Whether you're a therapist, a coach, or just a heart-led woman trying to live more boldly, this episode is for you. Welcome, Johanna. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. And we met a few months ago, virtually. Like, we had been connected for a few years. And, with you joining Next Level Latina, it's been such a pleasure to connect with you, to meet you, to hear your story, to see your transformation, but all the impact that you were already doing, and then just like accentuating and added volume to it. I'm so excited. And I know that you're all about breaking cycles, and you're a therapist, and you're from Ecuador. So I just want to start with like a brief introduction of who you are for those in the audience that don't know you.
Okay, well, yes, I do feel like, you made a pretty good introduction. But again, like I said before, thank you for having me here. Yes, I'm originally from Ecuador. I was born there. I moved to the United States when I was 13 years old. And yeah, the journey to getting here as a therapist now, it is long. And obviously we can talk about that. But yeah, now the message that I'm trying to carry is about obviously promoting and advocating for mental health. And one of my areas is especially speaking to Latinas, and breaking stigma, and obviously with that entails breaking cycles and a lot of the beliefs that we have been carrying for so long. But yeah, that's just like a little summary of everything. And obviously, like I talked before, I'm a mother as well. I have 2 boys, and I am married. I am married to someone who's from India, so there's that. We'll talk about that as well.
I love it because there's so much navigation of different values and mindsets and how much it affects your life on the everyday, right? And I know you talk about, through the program you created your own brand, Sana Sana Johanna. And I love that you talk about creating a space because you know how heavy it is to carry the weight of expectations of being silent sometimes, sacrificing things. And you wanted that space to provide a space to heal and to laugh and to learn together. So it's been so wonderful to see that. And, with mental health, it's still such a stigma in the Hispanic community. And, as an advocate myself as well, it's been great to step into a place where I feel very proud to be a mental health advocate and to talk
Mm-hmm.
about like the struggles of mental health. But it's really not easy because I mean, I don't know if you feel this way, but I don't feel like I'm doing anything radical. I just feel like I'm just saying
Yes.
like the facts. We're just navigating different values and it's difficult and all these things. And then people are like really moved by what you have to say. And I'm like, I
Mm-hmm.
thought this was common knowledge. I thought this is
Mm-hmm.
what we all came to realize. So I'm curious to know if that has been your experience too. Like, now that you've become more vocal in podcasts, you after doing the program, you got invited to podcasts, you got invited to a leadership board.
Yes.
Like, how has that been for you?
So it's been wild. It's been wild because to answer your first question, yes, I have experienced that, especially the stigma with clients or with anyone in general when they, it's like you said, these things and you have been living that maybe for a couple years, but then when you share it with someone, it's just like the norm. But then these people are like, wow, it's like that moment when they have that awakening per se, and then you're like, wait a minute, what did I just say? So that's why, as therapists, we have to be very, very careful and use our words with caution because you don't know where the client is, because you and I may be at a different level of growth, but this person's probably just starting the journey of healing or whatnot. But yes, that's very common, and it's such an enriching moment because you get to see that with your own eyes. And sometimes we take whatever we bring to the table for granted, and that's something that I'm learning with you, to embrace my voice and the skills that I have to provide for someone.
Yeah, and it's not easy, right? We talk about breaking cycles and in an empowering way and healing, but it's really not easy. And for somebody who just started their journey, how would you describe healing or breaking cycles? Like, what does that mean? Because sometimes we're so used to these terms, but people don't know what that means.
Well, to me, or the way that I define it, is that you're breaking out of something that you're not comfortable, that doesn't align with you anymore. Just because your family used to believe, or I don't know, a friend or family, they used to believe a certain thing, and it doesn't necessarily align with who you are authentically. That's when you have to break the cycle. Break the cycle is something that's harsh, is raw, and you have to do it alone. Yes, you can find the right people, the right resources, but it's internal work. And something that people don't tell you is that when you decide to change or enhance, your bloodline or whatnot, it entails a lot of work, effort, patience, and a lot of solitude. Even, like I said, if you're surrounded by a crowd, it's like you
Mhm.
have to dive deep in yourself and find the key out or the way out. But yes, and the way that you can start is obviously by analyzing or reflecting, why do like maybe you can start with your own patterns or behaviors and seeing why you keep repeating the same thing. And one of the biggest thing is that at night when you go to sleep you feel uncomfortable, or it's like that bad aftertaste, it no longer fits you. So that's when you can
Mhm.
start reflecting and seeing where. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have all the answers, but you do have to have the one to start and then find
Mhm.
someone who can help you along.
Yeah, and as a person who's a therapist, it's so interesting because you went to school to have the tools to do that for yourself, right? And it's still difficult and it's still hard, even as a professional doing it. The
Yes.
solitude piece, I think, comes with, I think, just understanding that you're the one that has to do the work. It's not something you can
Mhm.
outsource to other people. And,
Mhm.
healing happens in different ways. It can happen in joy and community and fun. And it also happens through that journaling session that you had, that you realize that you have this pattern
Yes.
that you don't want to repeat. And what I'm hearing is that the way to know if you're in alignment, which ultimately will lead to breaking cycles and stuff like that, is to notice how you feel and reflect back on it. Like,
Mhm.
start like a practice where at the end of the day you're like, how do I actually feel about my life? Do I
Yes,
enjoy what
yes.
I do? Yeah, so it's a process of introspection, and it's like layers that just keep pedaling.
Yes. Yeah, and that's we use different analogies, but definitely one of those is, reflecting on why do you keep coming back to point one, or point zero, especially if you're trying. And a lot of people, what they do is that they ignore They ignore and they think that it's just going to magically disappear. But what they don't know is that they're repressing. And anytime you repress emotions or a desire, it comes back stronger and it shows in different magnitudes. So, yeah. And no matter how much people try to hide it, it will come out.
And I think that's what people don't understand sometimes, especially in the
Mm-hmm.
Hispanic community. At least my experience with my family, because I don't want to generalize. Sometimes I've done
Mm-hmm.
videos and people are like, "Well, not my." I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Okay, bro, I'm not talking about you." But it has been my experience that when you talk about like you need to express your emotions, you need to really like if you're sad you need to honor
Mm-hmm.
that and feel that. I'm not saying dive deep into it and be stuck in spiraling in sadness. I mean like acknowledge it, right? And so
Yeah.
what I've gotten responses with are more like no, ponte a trabajar, get to
Mm-hmm.
work, ponte a limpiar y se te olvida.
Yeah.
And I mean there's different places for like accentuating an energy, right? Like if I'm going down a
Mm-hmm.
spiral, of course it's going to be good for me to go on a walk. And it's not that I'm distracted. I'm being mindful about my experience. But when you say something repeatedly, like go clean or go, do something that's going to make you forget about it, that's not
Mm-hmm.
the same thing, right? What you're doing
Yeah,
is just
no.
ignoring that. You're suppressing it. And what people don't understand is that that comes back and they don't see the pattern of like, oh, my emotional suppression is actually causing me to be emotionally absent in my family, right? Like they don't
Exactly.
understand that pattern.
It's
And so
interconnected, yes.
yeah, and I don't think people understand it. And I think you can tell me what your thoughts are, but I think it's because they don't have exposure to
Mm-hmm.
people who live differently, right? Like it's what they've seen, it's what we've seen, and
Mm-hmm.
we get
Yeah.
used to it, and we don't know there's a new way of doing things. So I think therapy and the mental health journey and healing is just a way to add layers that you've never seen, like a possibility that you don't know.
Yes, yes. And like you said, it does take, being aware of these things, not just, brushing it off or putting something else on top. And that's actually one of the things that I do teach, and essentially like on the first sessions, is how aware or how emotionally aware are you? Because a lot of times we're like, well, I feel sad, but then when you start digging, it's actually something else. It can be connected to resentment or something else that probably happened even before you. So just by learning, what it is, and then treating that. The way that I say is that with emotions, they're like signals, just like the dashboard on your car. And then you get like the signals that you're not sure, like the to refill the liquid or the windshield, whatever, you go fill it up, fine. But then there's these other ones that like the engine light or something more deeper. Just like that, by being aware and seeing how to treat it, that's how you can be more emotionally intelligent. Not by ignoring it, just like the car. If you ignore it, it's not gonna go away. It's gonna get worse. It's gonna get worse.
Trying to convince Hispanic older men of that.
Oh yes, oh yes, and that's something actually that it's new, or that was like new at first. For me was having to talk to older like Hispanic people, like 70-year-old, 80-year-olds, and then
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, what can they learn from me because they're already stuck on this. So it's kind of like I'm rapping and teaching them in a way that they can be validated for their emotions, because a lot of times this is something or a belief that they have been holding for generations or years, and they're like, this is it, and that's what it is, and that's it. And when they come here, it's a process. It's a process, and I do enjoy my job. And the reason why I feel like I'm in the right place is because when I live here, it's like you leave from an experience, not just you meet someone and bye. It's definitely
Yeah,
like an
yeah, and I
experience.
want to get to that experience. I got my light. So we got straight to talking because we have so much to talk about. But you told us a little bit about what you do now, and
Yeah.
I'm curious to know about your personal journey. So you said you grew up in Ecuador.
Hmm.
How was that? Tell me about little Joanna. Like, did she want to be a therapist? Like, what are the moments later that made you
Hmm.
realize that you did want to be a therapist?
Okay. Well, what I remember from my childhood is that obviously the environment was different. I used to always go play with my friends. We had freedom to go outside and whatnot. So that was very beautiful. But at the same time, since I was young, I noticed that there was something different about me. And one of the things that I now know is that I was a verbal processor, that anything that happens to me, I have to verbally process it so that it makes sense in here. And a lot of people don't know about that. They think that, you just talk too much or what's going on. But I didn't know that I needed that. And my mom, she tried to provide what she could, but still there were like a higher level of need. So yeah, then my parents, they actually got divorced when I was 8. And that took a toll on me. And obviously until now, I'm still healing from that. But both of my parents, they were present, super supportive, but still there were like gaps that needed to be filled for me and my emotional growth. Then of
Mhm.
course, when I moved, actually, let me back up. When I was 9, I had a teacher, and she went somewhere. I don't know. She went to the bathroom or something, and then she told me, you know what, be in charge of the class. And I was like, okay, sure. And then I was teaching and just playing with the kids. But something was planted that day. Something was planted when I was there. I don't know. I just felt like, I don't know, like when you hear those sounds, like like a divine moment. And I was like, I don't know. Maybe I want to be a teacher because I love kids, I love teaching and whatnot. So ever since that moment, I was like, I want to be a teacher. I want to be a teacher. So then when I was 13, we moved here to the United States, to North Carolina. My grandparents, they have been living here since the 80s, I think. And they were living in California, and then they migrated to North Carolina. And right after my parents' divorce, that's when all the legal paperwork went super fast, and we were able to have our green card and whatnot. But yeah, you can imagine the transition of coming, from this to this. And mind you, I didn't speak any English. And here where I live, it was mainly white people, black people, and that was it. And probably like 2 Hispanics. And they were like the no sabo kids. Not to be, disrespectful, but yes. So that was a big transition. And obviously, trying to find the tools, learning the language, it was a lot. But from a young age, I would say that my biggest role model was my mom, because she always stood up, and then she worked so hard to provide for my siblings and I.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And it seems like from that moment with your teacher, it was kind of like a coincidence, like she was like, "Hey, take care of the class or whatnot," and it gave you an opportunity to see what you enjoyed. You enjoyed, from that age to have like a leadership role with like kids and to be with them and to share your knowledge. And so I think a lot
Hmm.
of the times when we're healing, it's just going back to what we always were and what we
Yeah.
always like to do, and those gifts that have been with us from the very beginning. So that's a beautiful moment. Thank you for sharing it. And as
Yes.
you were in the United States and you grew up over here, was like, what happened when you went to college? Like, did you know that did you start, wanting to be a therapist, or did you want to be a teacher? Like, how did that transition when you were older?
Okay, so after I graduated high school, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do, but everyone was telling me, don't be a teacher, they don't get paid well, blah, blah, blah. It was a lot of opinions. So I was like, okay, maybe they're right. And I started going into different fields. I went into dentistry and I hated it. I went into accounting, to billing. It was different things. And I was like, no. I was like, you know what? And that's when actually I had my first therapy session, and that was years back. And then she told me, why do you want to satisfy someone else? Just do whatever feels right for you. It doesn't necessarily have to align with anyone else. And I was like, you know what, yeah, because if it doesn't work out, I'll figure something out. And yeah, I went for it, and then got my degree as a teacher, and I loved it. I was like, this is where I belong, this is what I'm gonna do. And as I started working with children, they would come to me with very, very hard topics, and I was like, okay, well, I'm out of scope. I cannot, talk about these things. I don't have the tools, and I don't want to say something that's going to damage them. So I worked as a teacher for, I don't know, 3 years. And during that time, I was like, I need to do something else. I need to become part of the solution, I said. And that's when I decided to go into school counseling. And when I was doing my internship, one of the biggest moments for me was that there was this girl that she's been attending the school for, it was another school, but then she moved to our school, and she only spoke Spanish. So she came to me, and she found the only person in the school that speaks Spanish. And she found me, and we built trust. And then she started telling me how she was being abused. And at that time, I had different tools. And the fact that I was able to understand and help her out made a huge difference. And that's when I was like, okay, no, this is where I need to be to advocate for others. And obviously, yeah, at that time I had the tools and whatnot. And I swear, like all my life, I was like, I'm gonna stay in the school setting. That's where I loved, whatever. Then after, I started working as a school counselor, and this is more personal. I also wanted to be a mom, but I wanted to wait a few years. But then my doctor found that I had severe dysplasia, and it was almost at the stage of cancer. So he told me you have to have emergency surgery, and if you decide or want to have babies, it needs to be now. Because if he comes back, they need to do it again. And then what they do is that they burn your uterus, and that's essentially where the baby goes. So I was put under a lot of pressure, and yeah, we started trying, and thankfully I did get pregnant. But during that time, because I had to be taking care of myself and whatnot, I decided to go back and do my PhD, and I'm still working on it, but it was a PhD in psychology, and that's when I understood that that's really what I wanted to do. But it really is linked to a lot of things. And another moment was that after my baby was born and whatnot, I kept feeling this nudge, almost like if someone was poking me every night. And I was like, okay, what am I forgetting? Am I forgetting, to change the diaper or what? But everything was perfect, but it was every night. And it was like at 11 at night, 3 in the morning. I would wake up from it. And then it was like somebody telling me, do something, do something. And I was like, what else can I do? I don't know what else to do. So then I started, reading, and I was like, well, since I don't have anything else to do, let me ask about the licensure to be a therapist. Because when you have a school counseling degree, you can bridge and then they can make you a therapist. But I know it was a lengthy process, and the exams and everything were, from what I heard, was super complicated. So then one night I got pissed. I was like, what is this? I hate this sensation. I'm just gonna message people. And I emailed one of my coworkers, and we worked like 10 years ago, and it was in the actual clinic that I'm working right now. And I told her, what about the licensure? What are the steps? And she invited me to come the next day. And when I came, she introduced me to the CEO. And he was like, I want you to work here. And I'm telling you this because I think it's God. And I was like, okay. So then we started working on the licensure process, and it went so smooth, so smooth, that I was ready with my licensure and whatnot. And then I was getting ready to start working. But then again, the doctor was like, if you want to have babies, this thing came back. If you want to have babies, it needs to be now, because I wanted to have two. So the same story repeated. And then that's when I was like, okay, you know what? I was about to sign the contract, but then I got this news. And instead of seeing it, as a step back or as a road on the block, I was like, I need to really do this, because this is what I'm feeling my intuition. And my boss, he was he understood, and he respected that. And that pregnancy, it was a high risk pregnancy. And I'm glad that I listened to my intuition, and I was able to, respect myself and go through it. And I have now 2 babies that are very healthy, and that's done. So then after my baby was born and I was ready to go back, again, I reached out. He was like, are you ready now? And he gave me open schedule. He was very flexible. He was like, if you need to take your babies to appointments, do it. So it felt very, very aligned to me. But one of the biggest moments, and I shared this with you too, was when it was the second day as a therapist. I was seeing this kid, and then his mom was leaving, and right before she left, she ran upstairs and she was like, I have the last little bag for you. And then when I opened that bag, it had a devotion, and I really thought it was, like, may God bless you or whatnot. But this one was very specific because it said, hello, I am God. And I told my mom, I'm going to get a sign, and when I get the sign, I'm going to show it to you. So as soon as I got that card, I was like, here. So I do feel like, I'm here not only from the superficial level, but from a deeper point. I know that was
No,
long.
thanks for sharing all of that. I was taking it all in, and I think it speaks to so many things. One of them is your dreams as a woman. You didn't just have career dreams of being like somebody who could advocate, somebody who would create a difference in a child's life and now adult's life,
Mhm.
right? But also you had your own dreams, and they were equally as valuable and weighted. Like, you wanted to be a mother, you wanted to be a mother of 2, and to have that discernment and to say, like, I'm pausing this, it doesn't mean that I'm not gonna accomplish my dream, or it's just something that I have to do right now due to the circumstances.
Mhm.
And you've been met with amazing people such as your boss, who was like flexible. And I feel like
Yeah.
there takes a certain amount of, like, a state of mind to be able to even accept that, right? To be like, because some people, their upper happiness limit, the amount of
Mhm.
happiness that we're comfortable with would be like, oh, that's weird, it's too good to be true, like, why would I
Yes.
or somebody like that, but you had like the capacity to accept that and to be like, you know what, this is a wonderful person that's giving me opportunity to be flexible.
Mm-hmm.
Gracias a eso, and thanks to that, you've been able to create a beautiful career with your two babies, you know? And so it's so
Yes.
important. This goes back to cycle breaking and to healing, that you had the tools and the self-worth to be like, yeah, I deserve this. I deserve a career that I love. I deserve to have two kids. I deserve all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just so beautiful to hear your story. And now you're raising two bicultural kids, and that's very powerful. You know, us as
Yeah.
being bicultural, like I'm Mexican and American.
Mm-hmm.
You're from Ecuador and you've been in the United States for a long time and most of your life
Yeah.
now. So, you know, it's something different to them because they're a part of three cultures. You know, I said bicultural, but this is
Yes.
like tricultural, right?
Tricultural. Yeah.
What does that mean to you as a cycle breaker? And, you know, how are you navigating that?
Well, one of the things, and obviously, well, to raise them biculturally is something really beautiful, because one of the things that I do tell my husband and that we keep reminding each other, especially when families and everyone comes around, is that it really is a constant reminder that when there's love, or where love grows, and when we embrace both cultures instead of blending them into one, that's when you see them really come to life. And the way that, we raise them is by having, with my husband, obviously starts like way before, like whenever we're dating, we had very clear communication and expectations of what we wanted. And I really appreciate that my husband, he loves his culture. He is very authentic to it, and I feel like I was invited into it. I was never forced, so that changes everything. And the fact that he embraces that very well, and then I embrace mine, we come together, and then we can provide both perspectives to our kids. And obviously, it's really fun because you see them literally living both sides and creating their own little story. So
Yeah,
yes.
and having that assurance and validation that they are
Mm-hmm.
equally both, right? And they're like 200%ers, right? And that's such a beautiful, encouraging, acogedor, just like a very cozy way of like growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So congratulations. I saw that it was your anniversary recently.
Yes, actually today we are like 14 years. 14
Oh,
years. Yeah.
congrats.
Together. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that is so huge. And now that you're a mom of two, you know, some of us don't have kids. What do you think, you know, having two kids has taught you about your own healing journey? What?
For me, what really taught me is that I'm really strong, that the level of strength that I have is something I never imagined. I always used to think or see moms that, wow, they go through all that. That's amazing. And for some reason, I always used to think that, yeah, that's not me. And again, it's about, breaking that and changing the way you think. But when I had my babies and the things that I went through during labor, it just shows how strong I am, and how I am the mom that they need to be. And one of the things that I am still, working and learning every day is that just because I'm a mom, it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to stop living my life just to play the role of a mom. And when they see me, living my life and living authentically, you can see that they absorb that energy as well. So yeah, it's definitely a big transition. One of the things I do say, and what you hear online, is that you need a village to raise a kid. Is true, but you also need a village for yourself, especially when you're going through so many changes, so many, hormonal, physical, mental. And if you don't have the right, person or partner, a lot of times, don't let that stop you from seeking help. Because a lot of people say, well, my mom's not like that. She's not very supportive, nor is my husband. So too bad for me. But that's why, professions like us and even coaches and whatnot exist, just so that you don't have to do it alone. And thankfully, now in 2025, we have different resources where you don't even have to leave the house and you can connect with someone. But yes, yeah, learn to ask for help. And that's something that I've learned, and I'm
Yeah,
still learning.
that's huge. As a high achieving woman, you know, it's hard not to be completely independent and to know when you need help and ask
Oh,
for it. I
yes.
mean, that's definitely
Yes.
we're all learning. And you mentioned that your husband is from India and he loves his culture. You know, a lot
Mhm.
of people like myself, I don't have experience having that kind of, you know, relationship where it's interracial.
Mhm.
So how do you and your partner bridge the differences of your culture? Because I'm sure there's like different values and different ways of thinking.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So, like I said, we met a long time ago. Right out of high school, we met. And yeah, I was like, I don't know where this is going, but I mean, let's go. And one of the beautiful things was that my mom, she never was like, oh, you have to marry this specific person, or, this is out of limit or whatnot. So she was like, just find someone who aligns with you and makes you happy. And I was like, thank you. And I never understood that that was such a great blessing until now that you hear different stories. And then my husband, so and this is obviously a general thing, but in the Indian culture, they would like you to marry someone from the same, not only country, but from the same state, religion, and caste.
Yeah.
And they have different caste, and it's like, like the highest caste is what my husband is actually, and I didn't know. So he's supposed to carry that and marry someone who, has the same caste, so that way they can continue that. But the beautiful thing about that is that his parents actually refused to do arranged marriage. So when they met, they ran away to get married. So that's when they chose each other, and they said they were never going to let my husband go through that. So they told him, choose whomever you want. So by having parents like that and having that platform already set for us, it made it easier. Obviously, not perfect, but it made it easier. A lot of the stigma too that comes with his culture, just like the Hispanic, is that they're very machista, very close-minded. Sometimes they said, oh, they have multiple wives. No, that's not the case. Not in our relationship anyway. And the way that I feel that we have both evolved is by continuously talking and checking in, especially if you think about being teenagers. If you don't grow out of that phase, or you don't keep improving yourself, and one gets stuck, it's going to create an imbalance. So by continuously helping out or being there for that person to help you be at the same level, it has made up the difference, the biggest difference, I would say. And one of the things we do apply in our marriage is that even though we communicate clearly, and a lot of times we have, discussions or disagreements we are not okay with, we don't entirely shut down and say, this is my way, that's your way, bye. We actually look and seek for, consultation, or we go to therapy as well. And that's when somebody can help us and we can find a solution rather than attack each other. And one of the things I do tell people, especially when they come from family oriented cultures, is that when you have conflict with your husband, be careful who you share it with, because no matter how much they love you, people will give you advice based on how they feel about you. And, sometimes they can give you good advice, and they mean well, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll forget. They can bring it on the next Thanksgiving dinner or whatnot, versus, going to talk to someone who's working with you and finding a solution. I do feel like it makes a huge difference. So yeah, it's a lot.
No, that's super helpful. And I mean, from such a young age that you were able to communicate, I think that's a skill that many people in the Hispanic community don't have, because in the Mexican community, it's like indirect communication, right? So
Mm-hmm.
then you communicate based on assumptions and based like if you say like, oh, I'm thirsty, the expectation is that you're gonna go get water for me, versus,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the United States culture is more direct, where it's like, instead of saying I'm thirsty, you would say, can you please go get me a glass of
Yeah.
water? Because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not the
Yeah.
same thing, right? I can be thirsty and I'm not asking you to bring me
Mm-hmm.
water. I'm just stating it. And so
Yes.
then it's admirable that you have that skill, that you had that skill from such a young age to be able to have uncomfortable conversations, because I'm sure it wasn't easy to
No.
like have those conversations from the start, especially when it was kind of a stigma to date. Because I mean, I don't have a lot of knowledge in the Indian culture, but I have watched like different shows that you get
Yeah.
like the pop culture. And
Mm-hmm.
so to me, it's so interesting that you're right. I mean, they want to marry from like the same religion, the
Mm-hmm.
same place, which is, you know, interesting. And, you know, you didn't have that barrier, thanks to your parents and their parents breaking certain cycles, right? So then
Yes.
it's not that we are like, you know, we wouldn't be able to break these cycles if our parents didn't break their own, you know, and maybe they didn't
Mm-hmm.
get all the way to breaking the most revolutionary ones, but they did their part, and for us to
Yes.
be able to live the way that we live. And it's a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
privilege.
Yes, yes. And like you said, then yeah, and that's all this is about. Because, even with my children, I'm trying my best and I'm doing my fair share, but even they are going to have their own struggles. But what makes all the difference is that they won't have to go exactly from what I went through. And you're paving, like I said, a higher platform or way so that they can have that. And yeah, they're gonna have their own challenges, is suspected, just because we're humans. But knowing and being aware that your parents did something that was different. For example, with my mom, the fact that she got divorced, you can imagine all the things she heard. But to me, the level of respect that I have for her is immense, because the fact that she did that decision and it created a safe household for us. And I feel like that's where it started. She created a safe space for me to communicate how I feel without judgment. My dad, he's nice and whatnot, but he's more this is what's expected, and I love you, but that's it. What
Mhm.
versus my mom is like, let's talk through it. I was like, you should have been a therapist. But then yeah. So yeah, and then you obviously hear, like you said, if you look on TV, you hear about the culture and whatnot. That creates, a lot of your stereotype or whatnot. But it definitely was a lot of trial and error. It was never perfect. It was never perfect. But what I do feel like it made all the difference in my life is having the courage to ask and go find a solution rather than staying there just going in circles.
And I love that you said that because courage, 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 courage. I
Mhm.
feel like when we look for skills with confidence and visibility and leadership and all these things, at the core, like it's really courage. It's like ser
Yeah.
valiente, being brave. It's like, I'm going to do this because I
Yeah.
know it's going to be good for my relationship. It's going to be good for my career. It's going to be good for my soul. So transitioning a little bit more into like finding your voice online. So your online presence has been such a gift. Seeing you start your platform, Sana Sana Johanna,
Thank you.
can you share a little bit about what that journey was like? How was that? What were some of the fears that, I guess kept you from showing up? And you have so much experience, Joanna, like from like being at schools to being a school counselor to being a therapist to your marriage to your I mean it's life experience and wisdom,
Yeah.
that is so valuable, and just seeing you start to share this is amazing. So what were some of the things holding you back and fears that came up around visibility, and we can start there because I have more
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah. Well, the fact that what was stopping me from, going on social media was just, I would say, the perspective or the way that I saw social media. It was a negative one. What I saw online was that it was a lot of hate. People were just, hyper focused on likes or content creation, and they were losing themselves against, all that. And obviously I know that's not the case and I'm overgeneralizing, but that's something that it was stuck in my head. And I was like, yeah, no, maybe in the future, whatnot. But I don't know. For me, especially, I feel like there's always a sign, and I believe in God. So I feel like He's always pointing or bringing the right person at the right time. One of the biggest factors that helped me transition to that was the experience that I was living, seeing the transformation from my clients or the transformations that they were having. And this particular day, I had three clients. They came and told me how my words literally changed their lives and how they're living, and not only, internally, but you could see it physically. There was this person that he didn't cut his hair for years and he had like a full on makeover. It was like a new person. So that particular day, three people showed up and they were telling me all these things. And I was like, okay, let me process that. And then that night, when I was, thinking and processing, I was telling my mom that I don't know what that feeling is. I don't have a name for it. Of course, it feels great and is nice and gratifying and whatnot, but I don't have a name for that. I told my mom, and she always listens. So she was like, yeah, yeah, you're wonderful. You do all this, but I was like, I want to find what that is. So then we had a conversation one Saturday, and I told her that seeing that is making a big impact in my life, seeing the level of transformation people are going through that really is life changing. And I said that if I know if I want to expand or expose my message, I have to go online, just because that's a very strong tool right now. But I was like, but I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I don't want to go. It's just because, I made it all about me. I was like, I don't want to go. People are going to judge. They're going to say that, I just started spiraling. And mom was like, yeah, just do it whenever you're ready. And then that following Monday, one of my, and this is in another place, another colleague, he invited me to be on his podcast. It was like 7 in the morning. And he's like, I want you to be on my podcast. That was literally the first line. So I woke up to it and I was like, I wanted to say no, but I was like, no, I need to be obedient and really follow what I'm feeling here. So I say, sure. And that same week, I was so busy. I remember being so busy with work, with my kids. And I remember seeing your post about, the Empowerment Circle and how this date it was going to close. But I was just so busy that I didn't have time to see it, actually put attention or pay attention to it until that very last day when you were going to close the group. And I was like, wait a minute. I was like, this is what I've been looking for. And that's when I messaged and you said, oh no, it's closing tonight, but I can call you tomorrow. So that was very nice of you to, wait and actually explain. So I really appreciate that. But that very first call that I had with you, and, that was prior joining the group, you gave me that answer. You really did. That answer that I was looking for, that I didn't know how to label that feeling. And it was resistance. It was resistance. That's what it was. It wasn't, I was like, what's keeping me? It wasn't fear. And I was asking myself, what's keeping me from going or jumping there? But in that first conversation, you said that is resistance. And the more I work on this, it becomes less about me and more about the message. I don't know what happened, but like I told you before, that created a cognitive shift and a behavioral one because my mind, it was like you gave me the key to this room that I was locked in. It really
Yeah.
was like that. It was like that.
Oh, thanks
And
for sharing. Everyone.
yeah, no. And then obviously we started working together, and every week it's been something new and so beautiful to live it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I feel it's all about creating that ripple effect, right? Because you saw it with your clients as to like, I am transforming their lives. They are coming as new people and I want to amplify my message. And you already had the nudge. Like, I know that social media is such a great tool to like reach people that I wouldn't otherwise have access to
Mm-hmm.
your message, but there was something that was keeping you from it. And sometimes when I promote my program, I say it's fear, fear of like
Mm-hmm.
judge or fear of what might come up. But sometimes, I feel like you had the confidence and you had like the capacity to do it. But I think you were just held back by resistance of feeling like the spotlight was going to be on you, right? As to like, oh, I am Johanna, the savior of like,
Yeah.
health. And when we talked, it was like it can turn less about you when it's about your message, and really
Mm-hmm.
you're just like instrument, an instrument,
Yeah.
and you're like a light to other people in that way. And so it's so beautiful. I'm so glad that you said yes to it and that you accepted not only being in the program but also accepting to be that light for other people and share your message. And so tell us what has happened since. So you mentioned that there was a cognitive and behavioral shift.
Yes.
Think you let go of? Like, what did you claim? And what kind of opportunities have you gotten now?
So I definitely let go of that perspective that things were like this, the black or white thinking, especially when it comes to social media. I started to accept that my voice matters and that I'm here to take space, and not, from a condescending place, but from a place of power and truth to myself. Because, like you said, I've lived through it and I've earned the place that I am today. It's not that I just magically, I'm here. And what you also said before is that what you bring to the table is very rich, and only, I can bring that. Because if they hire someone else, it can be someone that looks completely different than I do, and it may not necessarily align with the type of clients that are seeking the help. So, yeah, and by changing that mentally or the cognitive aspect, it changes your behavior. And my behavior is now aligning more with what I really believe, which is, this is a powerful tool. We're going to use it in the ways that, it's going to expand the message. And one of the key things you did mention was that the right people will find you. And I was like, yeah, makes sense. But I literally saw that come to life the first week. I literally, started posting stuff. And you told me just post. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just do it. and I post something. Of course, it has a message. It's not perfect, but I posted it. And that first week, I got called into 4 different speaking events for the community, and it was for Latino communities. Mind you, I've been living here for so long, I've never heard of these things. And then
Yeah.
after that, I was called for another podcast. And then also the coach that trained me for my exam for the NCE, for the therapist exam, she invited me to be on her podcast because she wanted to hear, my experience and whatnot. So it really did attract a lot of, different opportunities, but not just opportunities. It's things that are aligned to what I believe is me and what's taking me to that, I would say, otro lado de la montaña.
Yeah.
So, and then of course, with that, people start appreciating my expertise, and that's when they mention some things about research, um, projects and whatnot. And throughout this process, I've been called new words that I never would have thought. So, for example, one person called me a catalyst. They call me, ¿cómo se dice? A lighthouse. And then the other day, this one person, he was the president of the hospital. We had a conversation. He told me I'm a unicorn. He said, everything you bring, your experience, the language, the fact that you're not just holding that within yourself and you're looking to expand it makes you different. And I was like, what is this? So yes, and that was last week. So thank you.
Yeah.
I cannot
No,
emphasize.
I accept it. It's such, so beautiful to watch. And I think, what I think as a coach, sometimes I do things with my clients and with groups, and then I retrospectively look back and it's like, okay, what did I do? Like, what should I
Yeah.
do with this? For that specifically, it was about, a few things, identity, because the first thing we did talk about that, like, as you do different things, you create a new
Mm-hmm.
identity. And that's really sometimes the resistance that we feel, because it's like we don't feel worthy or entitled, or we don't feel like we fit that word necessarily, like, of like being a catalyst or like a thought leader or like a unicorn in this case. And so then I feel like that's the first thing we need to work on the identity, and letting go of the limiting beliefs that hold us in the same identity, right? And then the second piece is more, it can be rooted in science if you look at it that way, and it can also be rooted in spirituality. I mean, if you look at it through science, it's
Yep.
like claiming your goal clearly and saying, this
Mm-hmm.
is what I want, this is what I am, and this is what I'm after. And your brain will just do confirmation bias, right? You will see the right opportunities that weren't there before, and you will also change your behavior, as you said. But if you look at it spiritually, it's like, higher power, I'm accepting that this
Mm-hmm.
is something that I want to do, and I want to do it to create a meaningful, impactful change in my
Mm-hmm.
community. And so then seeing that intention, we have an everlasting source of goodness that's here to support us. And they're like, here you go, here you go, here's
Yes.
everything that you want. And it's like, oh, it's been here all along, it's just
Yeah.
my eyes to it. So I absolutely love your story. And, just watching you go through these podcasts and these speaking engagements. You were always such a powerhouse, and it's so great to
Thank
see
you.
that you're using your experiences to make further impact, right? And it's not only about the impact that you created on other people, but on yourself, right? And
Yeah.
like being happy, on being fulfilled, and like just feeling like I'm just excited about things. So that's also been like super rewarding for me.
Yes, yes. And everything you teach us through this program is something that I haven't found anywhere else, and that's something that I'm thankful for. So thank you for crafting and creating something so special, specifically, for us. Where, like I said before, I haven't found a place that I have feel or felt that I fit very well, and we have like similar mindset, and we both are working on things that really not only professionally will enhance our lives, but is more deeper. And so thank you for that.
Of course, it's been a pleasure creating something out of my heart, and I've also had to let go of so many beliefs to be able to even do that. But then seeing the results of what it has brought me has been like really, really wonderful. And
Hmm.
so thank you for sharing your story and your message. And again, I think speaking to maybe a fellow Latina therapist who maybe doesn't see like all the experiences she has, because sometimes we get so accustomed to our experiences and it's like, oh, it's whatever, you know, I have this degree, I
Hmm.
have experiences, but they don't realize how powerful that is. What would you say to them, when they're scared, meaning having that resistance or maybe scared of feeling seen?
I would say that it's okay to feel scared, but at the same time, is that really taking you where you want to be? Sometimes I know it feels comfortable, and this is, we're afraid, or we've never seen anyone in our family or anyone else done this before, like you've mentioned. It's obviously daunting, but if we have to be honest with ourselves, is this taking us where we want to be? Are we gonna let fear decide that we stay here? Are we gonna, be courageous and go and get out and really say and live what feels authentic to us? And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't, and you don't have to do it alone. You can always find someone who's definitely watching or waiting for someone like you. So go and be brave, and find someone who's gonna help you walk the journey.
Yes, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Where can people find you and follow your story and all your adventures?
So my handle for Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube right now are Sana Sana Johanna. It's very easy. Sana Sana
I
Johanna.
love that. It's like so encompassing of like the culture as well, because
Yes,
you're
Sana
Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you so much. And again, it's been a pleasure working with you. Any last words before we part?
The only thing I want to say is that, don't let those limiting beliefs define who you are. Go and find your voice, and believe in yourself, and trust those dreams that you have in your heart. They're there for a reason. Like I said, doesn't have to be perfect, but just respect them enough that you let them speak for you.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Joanna. A pleasure
Thank
having
you.
you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.